The CEO Hour with Dean Akers. The mission? To help CEOs and startups succeed in today's marketplace. Entrepreneur or established CEOs, is your business growing? Where's your business going? Let's talk about it with your host, Dean Akers.
Well, welcome to the CEO Hour. I'm your host, Dean Akers, and each week I bring you a top CEO or entrepreneur that shares their journey. And this often includes the thoughts and ideas that helped them in their success and the things they learned not to do again. Today, I'm welcoming Tim Marks, the CEO of Metropolitan Ministries. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you for having me here, Dean. I really look forward to this time of sharing.
Well, Tim, you know, our entrepreneurs, they listen and watch, and this isn't about what you did right. This is about your journey, and what they learn from your journey is their big takeaways. And I love to start the journey. Well, in your journey, we're going to start in October 1957. What happened?
Yeah, October 1957. I was born in Hutzel Hospital in Detroit, Michigan.
Wow, Detroit in 57.
Yeah, my dad is an immigrant from Yugoslavia.
Really?
And he immigrated to Windsor, Canada, just before World War II, which was a good idea because a lot of the relatives that stayed behind, it wasn't a very pleasant season for them. But his dad had moved to Windsor and worked in the automotive plants about 10 years and saved up enough money. It's a true immigrant story. He and his brothers and his sister came with mom across to Canada. Couldn't speak the language. They were all bald. They didn't know how to eat a banana. They didn't know how you eat a banana. What's this? You eat the seed? You know, what's that? And ended up like going to kindergarten because that's how they did it back then, to learn the language, and worked hard and met my mom, who was also of a Serbian descent, living in Detroit. And I'm the youngest of three brothers.
Really? So you grew up in Detroit?
I did. And what we've heard about 8 Mile, yeah, that's we lived just around 12 Mile in Crooks, a little town called Royal Oak, Michigan, which wasn't a cool town. It was a really middle-class town, but it's kind of cool, hip town these days. And my dad worked for a little tool and die shop and was a surface grinder, and but he was a leader. You know, he never made it past 8th grade. I remember when my mom got her high school diploma while I was going to junior high.
Wow.
You know, so it was like back in the day, you know, it was all about getting a job and working. It wasn't so much about going to college, that's for sure. So my brothers and I, we all were the first to go to college. We paid our own way. We never went off to college. We stayed at home and drove to a little school called Oakland University. And each got different degrees. My brother's in psychology and economics, and then I went into engineering. But we were just a typical middle-class family.
So what do you remember when you were in junior high and high school? Was there anything that stuck out that made you choose either a destination or something, or was just at a typical junior high school experience?
A lot of it was just the values of working hard. So, you know, getting a paper route and having like 80 homes on my paper route and saving up money, and my brothers working hard. We all kind of, even though my dad was a blue collar worker, he always kind of channeled us into work at the plant and clean machines or clean toilets or cut the grass. So we were always working, and that hard work obviously gave us discipline, and we saw the value of a hard day's work. And I remember buying my first car, which was a 67 Mustang, and I bought that with the paper route money. And I remember burning out the transmission about a week later, you know, because, you know, it was the 70s.
Oh, yeah.
When I was driving, and those that are listening know about Detroit, Woodward Avenue. Everybody would go drag racing, and, you know, we were driving a little too fast, and we didn't have all the safety features that we have in cars today. But having a 67 Mustang was a cool thing to have in high school.
So I got to ask you, I did a year stint as a CEO up in Detroit. And do you ever go back to the big car rally they have there?
Yeah, the Woodward Cruise.
Yeah.
It's just incredible. It's like all this Ford and Chevy and Dodge and Detroit metal that's there. We all grew up with that. We all got it. We all drove U.S. vehicles, but it's a hoot, and I love that part of our country. There's so much, if you will, tertiary spin-offs and businesses. It's not just automotive that benefits our country, and so I have a real heart for the manufacturing sector, but it's become a technology sector as much as anything else. And eventually I ended up working in the tech sector, actually selling back into the automotive sector. But for me, it was just feeling blessed, knowing that, I remember in the morning, like at 6 a.m., my dad having his like mother's oats and his banana, and you'd hear the cereal bowl clanging as he would mix it up. And that was kind of like the early things that I remember about growing up. A great man of faith. My mom, the church was a big part of our lives growing up. My brothers would go, they played the piano. They would go down to the local homeless shelter and play the piano, which is something we'll tie in a little later in the story. But me, I would never be caught dead at a homeless shelter or doing anything. But they were giving their time and their talent. And we were again, big people of faith, and just wanted to help others along the way.
Well, I don't know about you, but when I was in high school, my dad made me work in construction, and that was a big impetus. I did a paper route and all that, but it was a big impetus for me to not want to do that for a living.
I got that same experience. So I worked at a couple, I think it was Hawthorne Metal was a stamping plant in Royal Oak, and I still have the torn tendon in my finger from getting cut on some sheet metal. And then my junior year at college, Ford Motor Company was doing an internship, so I was at the Rouge stamping plant, and they actually tried to make me like a foreman. So I'm a 20-year-old kid back in the days when the union and management didn't get along, and I'm a 20-year-old kid trying to manage a bunch of union guys at the stamping plant. That was an experience. You got a lot of looks, and they weren't friendly looks when you would walk in. And there was a lot of safety issues that you had to deal with. And that was the other reminder that on a hot summer, August in Detroit, stay in college, find another career, do not work in the plant.
Well, so you go to Oakland University, local university there, and you graduate. And so when you graduate, did you go to a career fest, or because I know what your next step was, and it wasn't a factory or a hot job, was it?
No, it wasn't. No, and it's funny. It's like, I had it's 1979 when I graduated from college. So I had shoulder length hair, full beard, got the Jesus look going on, and I'm going to different engineering companies. So I have a bachelor's in science and engineering, a focus on electrical engineering, and I end up walking into the phone company. I don't think anybody remembers what the phone company is, but I walked into Michigan Bell Telephone in 1979, and they hired me in to work in their network engineering department. And I worked in engineering for about 6 years designing networks. And back in that day, there was no competition. We competed internally, though, really well.
Well, you were regulated. It was monopoly.
Right. We told you what it would cost, what equipment to buy, what you could do, what you couldn't do. And if it broke, we would tell you when we'd come fix it. There was no choice, no options, no flexibility. But that was starting to change, and it was really going to change because of technology, as well as major corporations like Ford and GM were driving change, and they were going to drive competition. And that's where I found myself spending a lot of my time.
So you graduated from college, or tell me about your college before we go to the break. How was college?
So I lived in Royal Oak. Oakland University was about 12 miles to the north. Had my car. I would drive up every day, go to school, drive back home, then go work at Denny's or work at my dad's plant and clean machines, and just keep that routine kind of going. And it wasn't very exciting, it wasn't very crazy because you're living at home, so you can't get too crazy, right?
Well, I got to believe, and when we come back after the break, do you have any pictures of your long hair and beard?
I can find some.
Yeah, that's got to be epic. You know, I mean, we all had long hair. When I show kids show my sons my pictures of my college days, they go, "Who's that?"
Yeah, and who would hire you?
Yeah, but that was the dress of the day.
Yeah, it was.
Well, again, I'm your host, Dean Akers, bringing you top CEOs and entrepreneurs every week that share their journey. When we come back in segment 2 with Tim, he's going to share more about his journey. But I always want to remind everybody about our CEO Physical. I have tons of you reach out to me every week, and I'll send you the PDF. It's a great tool for you if you're an entrepreneur or a business person to look at your company and fill it out, and it'll show you your own blind spot. So it's just something you can use. And you can get that at help@adjunctceo.com. That's help@adjunctceo.com. And so, again, this is Dean Akers, and we will be right back with Tim Marks in segment 2.
The CEO Hour with your host, Dean Akers. Connect with Dean at deanakers.com. We'll be right back.
So, you're a tech startup. You're working hard, trying to make it happen with big ideas, big dreams, and a small budget. You need to connect with people in the same boat. Now is the time to join the early stage startup group, the Innovation Center, an incubator for early stage tech firms. You can find them at tbinnovates.com. Now operating for over 14 years, the Innovation Center is a regional, national, and internationally known success story, continuing to generate momentum in Pinellas County. Twice, the Innovation Center has won the Tampa Bay Technology Forum's Excellence in Service Award and has been recognized by Entrepreneur.com as a top 10 international business incubator. And now, Tech Garage, a technology and entrepreneurship center, has joined forces with the Innovation Center to provide a co-working program in downtown St. Petersburg. Connect with the startup community. Connect with the Innovation Center. Go to tbinnovates.com. That's tbinnovates.com. And tell them the Adjunct CEO sent you.
If you're a CEO or organizational leader looking to expand your business, join the CEO Council, where you'll meet and exchange ideas with fellow CEOs without the pressures of a sales network environment. You can join today by sending an email to application@adjunctceo.com. The CEO Council is comprised of over 220 fantastic local business leaders you'll be able to learn from because they walk in your shoes every day. When you become a member of the CEO Council, you'll have an opportunity to build trusted relationships during the roundtable meetings, share your triumphs, vet ideas, and work through business challenges with peers who can provide real-world business solutions. The CEO Council offers opportunities to hear from world-renowned speakers that inspire ideas to help members grow as both leaders and individuals. Join the CEO Council. Request your CEO Council membership application today at adjunctceo.com or by sending email to application@adjunctceo.com. That's application@adjunctceo.com.
Helping your business succeed in today's marketplace. Welcome back to the CEO Hour with Dean Akers.
Well, welcome to segment 2 of the CEO Hour. Again, I'm your host, Dean Akers, bringing you top CEOs and entrepreneurs every week that share their journey. We're welcoming back Tim Marks, CEO of Metropolitan Ministries. And when we went to break, Tim was sharing about his journey, his early journey, and now graduating from Oakland University and joining the telecom industry.
Yeah, good old Michigan Bell Telephone. I was doing microwave radio design. So this was those towers you see on the freeways with these big like round horns on them. It was a new way of providing communications, long haul communications. And so I was doing the coordination with the FCC and the FAA for the towers, the FCC for making sure we weren't interfering with other systems that were out there. So I was designing those systems, and it was the new digital technology that was being employed.
Can I break you there?
Yeah.
When you were doing that in your meetings, did you guys actually say, this is the new digital technology, or did people think you were, where was that, if you reflect back, where was that at that moment? in your mind, because now it's easy to go, oh, that was the advent of digital. What was everybody thinking back then?
I recall the old guys, when I came in there as the new guy. Now I'm the old guy. When I was the young guy, they'd say, why does Ford Motor Company need 1.5 megabits to their company front door? Why would they ever need that? Because the backbone networks were 45 megabits. We're talking 4 gig on your phone, 4 gig, and we were talking about 1.5. Like, why would a business need that?
Perspective.
Yeah.
For our young listeners out there, they don't even have a clue.
No,
what would that be the equivalent of if you had you couldn't even upload a picture. You couldn't even text.
No, you couldn't. You couldn't. I mean, we were just, we're sending ones and zeros, we're yeses and nos and things like that. But I had a 45 megabit pipe. I'm going by memory here, but you might be able to get maybe 30 conversations going simultaneously down that pipe, where, again, today we have 4 gig at our fingertips. And, there was no cellular service at the time. There was no data service. Everybody, when you wanted to do data exchange, it was another phone line. And one phone line we call another phone line. Well, the phone company loved that because they sold a lot of phone lines. So like at Ford Motor Company, they had 45,000 people in the corporate offices. And if they wanted to do email exchange, well, they have their own phone number, and then they had to have another phone just to do data exchange. So there was a lot of extra phone numbers and equipment that was great revenue for them, but that was about to change. At the same time, I met my wife, who was also in the phone company. We were all Indiana Bell, Michigan Bell. She worked for Indiana Bell. And they had this big training center in Chicago, in Lisle, Illinois. And they would send young engineers to this training center. And it was kind of like a leadership development program, but it was to teach you about all the different technologies that were out there. And they used to call it like the love boat of the Bell system, because either you fell in love with somebody or you broke up with somebody,
Because you fell in love with
somebody else, right? And so,
a love boat.
Yeah, and so it's like you're in this training center. You're now in the dorm environment, and you're on expenses. Well, that's a great thing. So like let's go down to Chicago. We'll go see Yul Brynner doing The King and I at the McCormick Center, and you buy the lobster dinner. So on your expense statement, you do dinner, and on my expense statement, I'll do the play. So we were living the life, and my wife, Valerie, she's gorgeous, and I fell in love with her, and she was actually engaged. This is the love boat. So she was engaged to somebody when I met her in February of 81. So in February of 81, she's engaged to somebody else, and we're in the first semester. By the end of the second semester, I asked her to marry me in July, and in October we got married. So she ended up moving to Michigan. So I moved fast because I saw a real strong ROI.
Oh yeah,
with my Val as a woman working in engineering back in 81. She's a brilliant lady, gorgeous lady, and so I moved quickly, and luckily. She was disillusioned at the time and thought that this world that we were living in and going all these wonderful places on expense statements, well, that's the life for us. But I'm teasing a bit, but it was a lot of fun.
I'm blessed. For our listeners out there, a lot of times I know the actual CEOs that are on here and have known them for a while. And I've known Tim, and obviously I've known his wife, Val, for a long time. And I can clearly attest to the fact that one of the reasons you're my role model is you outkicked your cover.
Exactly.
And you knew it back then, but you also was a very smart engineer.
Yeah.
You did the mathematics really quickly.
Double income here.
Yeah, double income, and then beautiful woman, double income. We're not going to wait a long time to close the deal.
Yeah, right. That's something to be said there.
That poor guy got left in the dust.
Yeah.
And that comes back from your roots of being in Detroit, doing, what do you call it, road? With your Mustang and all that, just leave them in your dust.
Leave them in your dust. Very, very good. Well said. Yeah.
So now you guys get married.
Yeah.
She comes back to Michigan.
Yeah.
Is she still in her role in telecom?
Yeah. And so she ends up getting over onto the marketing side of the organization and product management and product delivery. And again, there's changes starting to happen with digital technology. This idea that you could send video or have video conferencing, that's new. Digital data exchange. Back in the day when I remember this model, Chrysler had a plant in Mexico and they had all their engineer designs up in Warren, Michigan. And when they needed to get the data designs to the plant, data delivery was called put a drum of data on the corporate jet and fly it to Mexico. That's how they did data exchange.
Wow.
There was no pipe to get it down there. There was just a plane. So that's how it was done. And so I got involved with designing something called these X25 data networks, packet switching data networks. So I designed a network for Ford to work with their CAD/CAM suppliers. They no longer have to drive data all over the town. They could deliver data using these pipes. And so that was one of the first things I got involved in. And as I kind of moved from building backbone networks to customer networks, then I got introduced to this concept that there's out there salespeople making money on my designs. I think I want to be that guy. I want to be the sales guy, not the design guy. But having a knowledge on how to design networks and meeting with customers and figuring out how to do that made me a pretty good salesperson, because it was about getting it right. It wasn't about the dinner or entertaining and whining and dining. It was about delivery. And if you're going to learn how to deliver, selling to GM and Ford, where everything is a commodity, you may think it's high value, but to them, it's a commodity because everybody in the world wants to sell them something. And back in the day, the phone company had market share. So everybody was knocking on our door. So that gave me some freedom to really get involved with entrepreneurial, although these days it may not look all that entrepreneurial, but back then this was new, different technologies, things that there wasn't a tariff out there that said, this is what you do. No, this is Ford saying, I want to do this, and then designing a network for them that would do that, and then delivering on that. And over time, as I delivered on those networks, then I decided to move over to the sales side and benefit from still putting networks and solutions together, but really being there for the customer and serving them.
So you were really on the cutting edge.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, you
absolutely,
because back then everybody you were selling to can't even comprehend what you were going to be able to do for them, I would bet.
Yeah, there'd be something that like IBM or Hewlett Packard and others would design something. They're like they were called these token ring networks or different IP networks, and they would design them as local area networks within the building. Well, then what Ford said, well, I want this building to have that network connection to another building, and oh, by the way, our building that's 3 miles away needs to be connected. Design me a network to start connecting all these things. So all these things that we take for granted today on the interconnectivity didn't exist back then, but there was tremendous pressure and business need to get there and to drive innovation and automation at every level of business. And it wasn't there before. And so there was lots of opportunity to get involved on the design side. And then, like I said, also on the sales side. And so here's this kid who, my first job, I got hired. I was making $16,000 a year. And I thought, I have made it. Back when I first started, working at Denny's, it was $2.50 an hour, cleaning food. And now I'm making $16,000. Well, then I get these commission checks and I'm making $50,000. I'm making $100,000. That was real coin back in the 90s.
Well, when we come back into segment 3, we're going to talk about real coin in the 90s.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, your journey really brings you almost to where you are today, but we're going to talk about that in another segment. Again, I'm Dean Akers, the host of the CEO Hour, bringing you top CEOs and entrepreneurs every week. This week, we have Tim Marks, CEO of Metropolitan Ministries, sharing his journey. And I didn't know this journey, but it's epic, and I can't wait to continue it in segment 3.
helping established CEOs and entrepreneurs. Connect with Dean at deanakers.com. The CEO Hour continues in a moment. Helping to navigate today's marketplace for startups and mainstays. Welcome back to the CEO Hour with Dean Akers.
Well, welcome to the CEO Hour, Segment 3. Again, I'm Dean Akers, your host, bringing you top CEOs and entrepreneurs every week that share their journey. And as we continue our visit with Tim Marks, CEO of Metropolitan Ministry, as we came into the end of segment 2, he's sharing his journey that I know I want to hear more about, because I know how our listeners will appreciate. Once you recognize economic opportunities tied to knowledge as you have, it's time to rock and roll, isn't it?
It is. It is. And, you learn a lot. You make some mistakes, but you learn quickly, because it was very much about economic independence. This concept of president's clubs. I had no idea there was this thing called President's Club. But when you make your first President's Club and you're hanging out at the Ritz-Carlton in Laguna Niguel.
Yeah.
Hey, I could get used to this. You mean to tell me I can order anything I want? I can drink anything I want? You're going to pay for my trip? And, oh, I like this. I like this. I like it. I like it a lot. And it was just, I still to this day remember, like, one of my first big commission checks, my manager at the time said, you got to go out and buy something. You got to remember that moment. Just don't put the money in the bank, but do something. And back then, Kawasaki had just come out with the sit-down jet skis. It was X2, if anybody remembers, but it was just still kind of a clunky jet ski, but it was one that you could sit on. And I was living on, Michigan has a lot of these beautiful inland lakes just north of the city. And I was living on this lake and got myself an X2 jet ski, because that was my first four-figure commission check. And I was like, that's what I'm going to remember on. And to this day, not this day, but through my entire sales career, whenever there was a large check that came in, I would try to do something just to remember that, not just throw it in the bank. And my kids that are in sales, I remind them to do the same thing. Don't just get the check, but do something memorable for them.
That's probably been my whole life, because I remember when I got my first big commission check, it was a 5-figure check. Yeah. And I was single, and I went straight down and bought myself a Rolex.
Yeah.
I was like 24 years old with a Rolex, and I'm like, I ride around.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
And of course, it doesn't matter at all.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter to anybody today. But, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So now, Val's in sales too.
She's climbing the ladder, and I'm kind of fine with, I'm going to be the sales guy. You worry about politics and going up the ladder. I'm going to stay where I'm at. And as we've gone, the phone industry goes through all these different kinds of reiteration of divestiture, and then we starting to come back together again. She ends up running and being named the president of Ameritech's internet division. And I'm a sales director managing a $90 million module, which, for all the salespeople that would appreciate, when you have market share and it's a $90 million module, then you get your new quota and you've got to grow at 10%. It's hard to grow 10%. It's harder to grow that 10% because you got people coming at you, which means you got to lower your prices, and then you got to continue to add value. And being an engineer, I had to take a calculated risk. I always had to keep pushing the envelope. So if my portfolio was X, Y, and Z, I always had to find X prime or Y prime or Z prime, something to add a little bit of more value.
Well, can I interrupt you there?
Yeah.
Is that not a message for everybody listening?
Well, I believe in calculated risk.
But wouldn't that be for our listeners to always be looking at calculating their risk and adding value?
Yeah.
Was that a differentiator for you?
Absolutely.
So I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that was a very salient point that I think a lot of our listeners miss, is that it's not all just Wild West. It's calculated value or calculated risk. And you clearly, when you did that, what happened?
Well, the customer saw me as somebody that wasn't just in one box, that they could bring other things to me, new opportunities could come my way, and it also created collaboration. I couldn't do it all myself. We were still the phone company. But because of the value of this customer was to the organization, we were able to do things that weren't the norm. So like when OnStar first became a thing, they had to record all their calls. And that was a big deal to be able to record calls. And how to interface into their systems. And so we brought coders and others to the table to help kind of figure that out for them and be part of that. That wasn't in anybody's product portfolio. There was no product manager for that. There was no marketing department for that. There was just me with the customer, and they had a problem that needed to get solved. And I had to bring the different parties together to do that. Now, at the same time, if it fails, that's going to be a reflection on the rest of my business.
Right.
So you got to make sure you get the right partners.
Right.
Back to this idea of calculated risk. Have they proved themselves out? Are they worthy? Are you building the relationships with people you can trust? And you put it all together and you work through that. But at the end of the day, you've got to protect your base business, but then you're always looking at what's the next thing you can do that adds value in your customer's mind, but also doesn't diminish the relationship, because failure isn't an option.
I think a message I'm getting right now that I just wrote down to take away from myself, that I heard from you, is that one of the things is calculated risk, but you better pick the right partners.
Yep.
And I think I saw that at the onset when you were at your telecom university in Chicago.
Yeah.
You picked a partner there, right?
Yeah, I did.
You did pretty well there.
I did real well there.
And that was a calculated, that wasn't even calculated, I don't think. But so picking the right partners. So tell me now what happens. How does all this morph to you ending up in Tampa, Florida?
So as this tech industry gets to explode in 2000, it's rock and roll time on the stock market. You know, broadband.com is being sold. Mark Cuban's making millions and billions with really rinky-dink technology. So everybody was starting to get ready for a play like that. And Val and I cashed in our stock options in 2000, and we moved to Boston, and Val was offered to run a digital broadband company in Boston that was being propped up by the private equity world. And the play was get eyeballs, get the scale, and then sell it. And so that was the play that we were going to go to. And so we went to this, it was the Wild Wild West. Like, never did I thought that my 3 kids and my wife and I would be on a Learjet, that the private equity guys, flew to Detroit, picked us up, flew us to Boston, let us check out everything. And oh, by the way, while we get Val to start working for us, we'll put you up on the Cape for a month in this beautiful waterfront home. And it's just all this amazing lifestyle is hitting us. And then Covad Communications was a DSL provider, and they missed their quarterly numbers. And that was the sign of the house of cards was about to fall. And so she got caught up in that, had to liquidate the company, had to let a bunch of people go. But she built a really good relationship with the private equity folks. They liked the way she led. We were in Boston from 2000 to 2006. And eventually, because of the relationship she had with the private equity people, they asked her to run a company in Clearwater. That's what got us to Tampa. What got me into nonprofit was 9/11. So we moved the kids to Boston. My last year in the corporate world, I made $500,000. My wife made even more than that, and we're living in a $2 million home in Newton, Massachusetts. And along comes 9/11, which changed the world. Those first 2 planes took off from Boston, and there were a lot of people that lived in Newton on that plane.
Oh my gosh.
Because it was those planes were heading to the west. They were heading out to Silicon Valley, and some of Val's investors were on that plane.
Oh my gosh.
And so your proximity to Boston, New York, DC Pennsylvania, your proximity, I mean, it shook the whole country, but your proximity to those areas really shook us all. And it was like, life is short. Stephen Covey says, think with the end in mind. I started my story talking about how my dad was an immigrant, man of faith. Life is short. Think with the end in mind. Is this $2 million home the most important thing to me? Because tomorrow it could be gone. The tech sector came and left. So there was a lot of this, I'm going to take a step back and figure it out. And for me, I walked into the Boston Rescue Mission. Remember I told you I would never be caught dead in a rescue mission or a homeless shelter. I walked into the Boston Rescue Mission and said, I can't work on the recovery side. We were doing detox, people coming out of heroin addiction, but I'm pretty good in the corporate world. I think I could help you build relationships with the corporate community in Boston. And that started my journey from living a life of affluence to a life of meaning as a result of 9/11.
Wow, what a great segue. Well, again, Tim, we're going to come back into segment 4 and learn more about that journey with the end in mind. That's going to be a takeaway from me. Again, Dean Akers, your host for the CEO Hour each week, bringing you top CEOs and entrepreneurs. And every week, I've got to tell you, because these go up as podcasts, these journeys become epic for me. This is one of my most favorite things, and I've known you for a while. This is so cool. So when we come back into segment 4 with Tim, we're really going to get into where we work with the end in mind and creating purpose in our lives. See you in segment 4.
Success never takes the weekend off. Connect with Dean at deanakers.com. The CEO Hour continues in a moment.
Growth begins by understanding where you are now. For a limited time, business growth experts at Adjunct CEO will provide a full CEO physical of your business valued at $10,000 for free. Email ceophysical at adjunctceo.com. This offer includes financial, marketing, and sales analysis and an outline to help you strategize future success. For your free CEO physical, email ceophysical at adjunctceo.com. CEO physical at adjunctceo.com. Florida ranks high as a new hub for business growth and innovation. Startups, restarts, and starting over are all part of the new vitality generated as geography and economic opportunity collide. As Florida's entrepreneurial ecosystem grows, many are using Synapse to grow their business. Synapse is a groundbreaking methodology that connects all personas within the innovation economy, utilizing a method that enables all users to progress in meeting their given needs while promoting much-needed community engagement. Never more than now has Florida presented opportunity to be better aligned in business, providing huge potential for greater overall results with strong collaboration and holistic leadership. Synapse is a growth synthesis platform that will allow you to take advantage and flourish in ways you never thought possible as an entrepreneur, as a business, and within the context of community, events, connections, publishing, all with Synapse. See for yourself at synapsefl.com. That's synapsefl.com.
Helping your business succeed in today's marketplace. Welcome back to the CEO Hour with Dean Akers.
Well, welcome to segment 4. Again, I'm Dean Akers, the host of the CEO Hour, bringing you top CEOs and entrepreneurs every week that share their journeys. This week is epic with Tim Marks. I mean, the first 3 segments have been, they've been epic, to say the least. To have the things that happen in our lives and on our journeys redefine us. And I've got to believe that whole 9/11, you going into the Boston deal, the whole shake there, really, as you said, it created a new purpose for you, right?
It really did. And, you know, I worked there as a volunteer and I got to meet some of the clients. So again, these were men and women coming in out of heroin addictions or cocaine addictions. So it was a single, but it was a post-detox and a life change program. And again, as my role there was to try to build relationships with the corporate community. Well, you can't do that, and you can't sell anything unless you believe in it.
Right.
Right. And so as I got to know the clients and know their stories, I was able to tell their story, which is what selling is all about. And this was the easiest sale I've ever made because it's impactful. It's life-changing. Sure. And I'd run the Boston Marathon in 2003. Didn't qualify for it, but I got a number because My wife Val knew the guys running the website.
It's all about
for the BAA, the Boston Athletic Association. So I got a number. I ran the Boston Marathon. It was like no other thing. It was like for 26 miles, people are cheering you on. It was the greatest experience of my life. The next year, John Hancock gave us 5 charity numbers to the Boston Rescue Mission. Now, you could sell those numbers back then for like $3,000 and be done. And I did something, back to a calculated risk, I did something different. I said, wouldn't it be great if we could get 2 clients, 1 man and 1 woman, to run the Boston Marathon? Not knowing what it means to come out of recovery. I'm just like, wouldn't that be great? Yeah, that would be a great story. Now let's figure out how to do that. So I met 2 clients in October, Erica and Anthony. And Erica had come out of a heroin addiction. She was only 23, but she had gotten involved in high school. But before that, she ran track.
Wow. And
Anthony, who was trying to get out from going to jail, grew up in Dorchester, and he was dealing with a cocaine conviction. But part of his, if you will, sentence was to get clean, and we were trying to keep him from having to go to jail. And he also ran track. Well, okay, so I got 2 potential runners. Now, who's going to train them? I got a family at home, and I got this idea. So we had some AmeriCorps Vistas that were doing their 1 year of service. I said, look, I'll give you guys these 3 numbers, and you're going to train them. And there was a little gym across the street, and you'll work with them at night, and you'll take them on long runs. And then I started work on relationships. So I got New Balance on board to sponsor them and get them all gear. We got the gym, let them work out for free. And we got on WBZ and told their story. And this little homeless shelter had never gotten a TV story except for Thanksgiving Day, and people come for Thanksgiving food. And we were able to tell the story specifically of Erica. And that for me was like, oh, I can do this. This is what I used to do when I was selling the Ford, but this is life-changing. And these good things are happening. And that's when I decided I'll do this full time. No longer just a volunteer. I'll do it full time. So I went from making $500,000 a year to $30,000 a year. And I was having the time of my life, being involved with that ministries and life change. Again, there's nothing greater. I mean, I've been to all these presidents' clubs and and bumping into OJ on the golf course, which we didn't know what that was going to mean like in the future. But just all these amazing experiences I had in the corporate world, but nothing could beat this idea of really changing someone's life. I know part of what you do in these podcasts is to bring about life change and help others along the way. And so I found my niche in just doing what I was doing before. Engineers like to solve problems. So that's all I did. I can't counsel anybody. I can't case manage anybody, but I can help the case managers be more successful.
Well, you're an innovator, and that came about probably in your telecom innovation. So now you come to Tampa, and I mean, here you've totally re-engineered and innovated a nonprofit, right?
Yeah, but I'll tell you, nothing good happens at Metropolitan Ministries without the community's involvement. The community has made us the organization we are. But when I got there, we were in the red. The facilities weren't all that great. And I can't go ask as a fundraiser, which was my role when I got down here. I can't fundraise for something I don't believe in. Right? Sure. I can't sell for. So we needed to get things right. So we got things right. And then we got involved with life change. We got involved with telling those stories of a mom. This was different. Like before it was singles. This is like families. Families are complicated. I think most of the people listening are from a family. Yeah. And they could they might raise their hand. Yeah, families can get difficult. So, like what if mom screws up and the kids are the innocent victims? What do you do then? Or dad screws up and mom's the innocent victim. So there's these family dynamics that we had to address. So, it's a holistic program, infant to adult. It's all about alleviating suffering, promoting dignity, instilling self-sufficiency. And all I did was try to focus on mission and vision and just keep preaching mission and vision and holding ourselves accountable. Mission is what we do. Vision is what we aspire to be. And every day we just worked on getting a little bit better, continuous process improvement. We're probably the only homeless shelter that has a black belt in process improvement on staff. We have about 150 KPIs that we measure, and we're always looking how we can take the dollars farther. So just real quickly, in the last 3 years, we've had a 10x growth in the number of families we care for. And at that same time, expenses went up 39%. Now, if you do the math, 10x over 0.39, because 0.39 is 39%, that's a 25 to 1 return on investment. So we're doing more innovative things. Instead of waiting for families to come to us, we have a mobile case management program. We're caring for as many families off campus as we are. So we have 140 units of residential apartments and shelters where families are safe and kids are safe. But we also take and care for 300 families out in the community. We have met mothers that are living in storage lockers and case manage them out of the storage locker, or a mom sleeping in her car and case managed her to get out of that car into a safe housing. Moms that are doubled up at a home or a motel or just sleeping in a tent. So what we're doing is we're helping more people than we've ever did before, and driving innovation and measurements, all the things that you would do in your business, we have brought to the homeless environment. And I would just say, it's like, if a engineer can run a homeless shelter, then anybody that's listening to this podcast, they can make a difference in any nonprofit. It's whatever you're passionate about. So first your heart, take your passion, take your experiences, and then take the lens on how you see things. You can make a difference in any organization, because if an electrical engineer can have any impact in a homeless shelter, then anybody that's listening here can do the same thing.
Well, but as we get close to the end, you're an innovator too. I mean, to your Boston Marathon story, that's an out of the box thinking. At Metropolitan Ministries, you've done your businesses that take these families and make purpose for them and job train, and also make it an entity where they have purpose, right?
Yeah.
You don't get out of bed doing this just by accident.
That's true. But in Marcus Buckingham's most recent book, 9 Lies About Work, the last chapter is about leadership is spiky. My strengths are not your strengths.
Right.
And you've had all these different CEOs on their podcast. Right. And as you've seen it, each one has a different strength that made them the right CEO. And so for all your other folks that are listening, their spikiness, and Buckingham would say, lead with your strengths. Don't worry. You got your weaknesses. I get that. But lead with your strengths. And the strength that you have might just be what an organization needs to get over the hump and be a better organization.
As we close out, give me the strength you lead with.
I guess for me, it's a passion for what I do. There's no work-life balance for me because it's all good in my mind. The work I do and the life I live, it's fine, because it's a sense of purpose and transformation in the lives that I work with. It would be for me this idea of being entrepreneurial, that trying to solve the problem. If there's a problem, I want to fix it, and I'll find a way to get it done. And I don't like taking no for an answer. So to be always pushing as hard as you can to find the solution that needs to be delivered, whatever the situation might be.
Well, Tim, for all our entrepreneurs and stuff out there, I know they're listening about that purpose and driving, but I got to tell you, what you've done with the organization here locally, how you shifted gears, is amazing. The Boston Marathon story will always resonate for me with the end in mind. And again, thank you for joining us today.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Again, I'm Dean Akers, your host each week, bringing you top CEOs. And I just want to again thank Tim Marks, CEO of Metropolitan Ministries, great organization, but more obvious, a great CEO. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Dean.
Have a great week.
Thanks for listening to this CEO Hour with Dean Akers, helping businesses and CEOs succeed in today's marketplace. Receive a free CEO physical when you connect with Dean at deanakers.com. That's deanakers.com. And join us again next week for the CEO Hour with Dean Akers.